Greed, hatred, and delusion are the three poisons, tam dok in Buddhism, considered the main causes of suffering and samsara. Each of these poisons disturbs the mind and causes people to lose awareness, leading to actions that harm themselves and others. Let's take a closer look at each poison to better understand their effects. 1. Greed, lobha. Greed is one of the deepest roots of suffering in human life. Not just the desire to possess material wealth. Greed is also expressed through a strong desire for fame, power, and even emotions. This is not just a normal desire, but a craving that is never satisfied. Greed is like a bottomless pit, which no matter how much wealth, power, or emotional satisfaction we pour into it, it is never enough to fill it. Greedy people are never satisfied with what they have, always wanting more, constantly looking for external supplements. This leads to an imbalance in life when we put too much attention on temporary things and forget the true value in the soul and relationships between people. When we do not achieve what we want, our minds sink into disappointment, insecurity, and suffering. Greed not only creates dissatisfaction with what we do not have, but also causes anxiety and fear of losing what we have achieved. It leads to a life full of stress, competition, and jealousy when people are willing to sacrifice even the good things in life, such as kindness, sincerity, just to satisfy personal ambitions. In addition, greed can also turn people into slaves to their own desires. When the mind is dominated by greed, people will easily lose control, act regardless of morality and consequences. This greed not only destroys oneself, but also negatively affects those around us and society in general. In Buddhism, greed is considered one of the three poisons because it is the source of suffering, dissatisfaction, and ignorance, pushing people into the endless cycle of reincarnation. Indeed, only when we realize the impermanent nature of the world and know how to let go of greed can we find peace, freedom, and achieve true happiness in life. 2. Anger, dosa. Anger is a psychological state that carries anger, hatred, and hostility. When anger erupts, it is like a fierce fire that burns all the good things in us. In the moment of anger, we lose the ability to see things objectively and thoroughly. The true nature of the problem is distorted, giving way to negative thoughts, leading to actions that we may later regret. Anger not only hurts others, but also destroys ourselves. It is like a poison flowing through the body, blinding us and clouding our compassion, understanding, and ability to empathize with those around us. In the heat of the moment, we easily forget that everyone has their own pain and challenges, which without anger we could understand and accept. When anger takes over, it is like a raging fire, sweeping away all noble values such as forgiveness and patience. Actions taken in anger are often hurtful, destructive, damaging relationships, causing emotional damage, and leading to isolation. In the end, the ones who suffer the most are not only those around us, but ourselves, caught in a vicious cycle of hatred and suffering. 3. Delusion, moha. Delusion is one of the three basic poisons that lead to suffering and is the greatest obstacle to human beings achieving enlightenment. Delusion is not simply a lack of understanding of the external world, but also a lack of insight into the true nature of all things, phenomena, and oneself. In Buddhism, delusion is considered the root of all wrongdoing because it causes us to stray from the truth and live in illusion. Delusion blinds our minds to the impermanent nature of life, the constant change of all things. We often think that what we own, our relationships, and this body itself are permanent, that they truly belong to us. But they are all temporary, created by causes and conditions. Down with delusion, we fail to see this clearly, leading to clinging and suffering when we lose the things we are familiar with. In addition, ignorance also makes us misunderstand ourselves. We tend to identify ourselves through our ego, through our successes, fame, money, or values that society recognizes. However, all of these are illusions, and when we cling to them, our minds become blind, not realizing the true nature and selflessness of human beings. Ignorance creates a distinction between me and others, causing selfishness, jealousy, and hatred. When immersed in ignorance, we cannot distinguish between right and wrong, good and evil, leading to actions without realizing the consequences. Ignorance makes us believe in the illusion of material happiness, causing us to chase after frivolous things, ignoring the core values of life. This ignorance creates endless cycles of suffering, because every time we pursue something to satisfy our ego, we fall deeper into ignorance, further away from the truth. Not only stopping at the individual level, ignorance also spreads in the community. When people believe in false values imposed by society, customs, or traditions. For example, the concepts of power, wealth, and success often make us forget about kindness, sharing, and love for others. When ignorance spreads in the community, society becomes chaotic. Conflicts and injustices increase. To overcome ignorance, Buddhism encourages people to practice wisdom and meditation in order to understand the truth of all things, thereby eliminating ignorance. When wisdom is opened, we will clearly see the true nature of life, no longer dominated by illusions and greed. Only then can we achieve peace, liberation, and harmony with the universe. Letting go of ignorance is the first step on the path to enlightenment, helping people to free themselves from the bonds of suffering and samsara, moving towards a more peaceful and meaningful life. When the three poisons combine, they are not simply the cause of the small sufferings in daily life, but also the deep source of all the suffering and dissatisfaction that people have to face. These three poisons create a negative chain reaction that makes us lost in the vortex of suffering, samsara, and never find true peace. Greed leads us to pursue endless desires, whether it is material, fame, or emotions, and when we do not get what we want, we will be caught up in hatred, anger, and dissatisfaction with ourselves and the world around us. Ignorance is the deepest foundation, preventing us from seeing the truth of life clearly, from seeing the impermanent nature of all things, thereby leading both greed and hatred to their peak, pushing people away from the truth and away from true happiness. These three toxins interact, complement each other, and form an endless, vicious cycle, trapping people in ignorance and endless reincarnation. People live in a repetitive circle, searching, wishing, facing failure and suffering, but cannot find a way out because they are covered by the fog of ignorance. Therefore, in Buddhist teachings, recognizing and letting go of these three poisons is an important step on the path to liberation. Liberation here is not only about escaping from the sufferings of this present life, but also about ending the cycle of rebirth, completely freeing ourselves from all bonds and reaching complete enlightenment, where there is no longer any suffering and suffering. To achieve this, we need to practice spirituality continuously and persistently. The path of practice is not easy, but it is the only path that leads to ultimate peace and liberation. The practice begins with clearly recognizing the existence of these three poisons in our minds, realizing that greed, anger, and ignorance are not the true nature of human beings, but are only temporary psychological states that arise from external conditions. When we recognize their presence, we will no longer be swept away by the flow of those negative emotions, but can observe them objectively and calmly. Next, meditation and mindfulness practice are important methods to train the mind, helping us develop awareness and the ability to recognize toxins when they arise. Meditation helps us train the mind to become more alert and clear, not being carried away by temporary emotions. When we recognize the appearance of greed, anger, or delusion, we can let them go before they develop into negative actions and thoughts. When the mind is purified through the elimination of the three poisons, compassion and wisdom will arise, replacing ignorance and suffering. The mind then becomes clear, peaceful, and reaches the highest level of awareness. This is the state that Buddhism calls enlightenment, where people are no longer controlled by samsara and suffering. It is the ultimate state of liberation, where the mind is completely free, no longer entangled by the constraints of material life or mental suffering. Practicing to eliminate these three poisons not only brings personal liberation, but also has a positive impact on society. When each individual practices compassion, wisdom, and equanimity, the community will become more harmonious, with less conflict and tension. People will live in sharing, love, and respect for each other, instead of jealousy, competition, and anger. This not only helps individuals find happiness, but also contributes to building a peaceful, sustainable society. In short, practicing to eliminate the three poisons not only helps us overcome suffering in life, but also leads to a meaningful, peaceful, and happy life. When the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance are destroyed, the mind will be purified, compassion and wisdom will replace them, opening the door to enlightenment, helping us to escape the cycle of birth and death, and reach the final state of liberation, where there is no more suffering and anxiety. This is the ultimate goal of the path of practice in Buddhism, the path leading to enlightenment and absolute harmony with the universe. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully the above sharing will bring value to your life. If you find the content useful, don't forget to comment your opinion below. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interesting content. Hello, and see you again.